Hello everyone, this is 41 Celsius 25, Winter Solstice 8. Welcome back. This is a build I did. It's to the original intention of it, I was hoping to do a recording of how to build a pretty decent sized library. But it got a little on the lengthy side. Like, let me put it this way. The video recording itself was about 50 gigabytes. That would take a while. So yeah, I figured I was probably just gonna end up showing this off and provide a download link and such. So yeah, that's basically how that kinda came to be. Just sort of like in a bit of angles with this. Okay, let's... I was running a correct angle. Or camera. Okay, so this is a library build I did. It is a pretty large library build. Possibly one of the... actually, I want to say second largest libraries I ever personally tried to piece together, but in terms of a library on its own, without anything attached to it, it is the largest I've made. By far. So, yeah, I started with, in terms of building this, I started from the pillars. I started kind of like, normally I don't lay down the foundation work entirely first thing until I decide a little more on how I actually want to put it fully together, because I want to also like do a bit of the inside and like underneath whatever as I go at it. But yeah, I did this a little differently from that, but it still turned out pretty well. So first I laid out these three here, these three pillars, and then I laid out the rest of the pillars, the cornering ones, and so on and so forth. It turned out pretty well. After that, I got some of the next floor sort of idealized as to where I wanted it to be. Most mainly, like, what level layer it's at. But I didn't, like, put it in or anything. That wasn't until later, like, after I, like, did the windows. Yeah, I want to say it was after I did the windows. Or mostly did the windows, I should say. I didn't put the actual windows themselves in until after I put the bookshelves in. And I really thought about how I was going about this place. And this was, aside from the roofing, this part here was just about the last thing I've done. Like, after I did the bottom, after I had my ideas in for the bottom floor, mainly of, after the windows were done, the next thing I kinda did was, I put this in. Actually, before I did that, I put these bookshelves in, and as well as over there. And then I sort of had the bookshelving up here kind of more mapped out, which was basically just exactly above the previous bookshelves, so I could have these right here, and they could share a power source that's basically hidden, and this would be a little more survival player friendly if, like, say someone wanted to like download this and use this for something. Yeah. But some of the other lighting like this came out later on. So before I actually even put this flooring in, I already had these stairs put in. Like, I was just thinking of the transitioning from one to the other, how I wanted to go about that. I decided a bit more of a contrast color thing going on, and like ever since dark oak came out, like, I can't, like, convince myself to just use spruce anymore for this kind of thing. So, yeah, dark oak was my choice for, like, the floor down here after that. And after I decided on the floor and, like, put it in, that's when I actually kind of, like, started planning out the bookshelves. Now, the windows on the bottom floor were actually already done at that time. I want to say this one was actually before I actually... I want to say this was after I did the flooring here and around the time I did the windows up here in terms of glass. Anyway, then around the time I was about to put the floor in up here, that's when I started putting this little area down here in the middle. Like here and here is like checkouts, and this is like the information desk. So after I put around the time I was putting the actual flooring up here was when I decided to toss this bookshelf area here, this sort of island-esque thing. And I was doing all kind of like prepared like descriptive details about how I was designing all this stuff, like including the banners even. Like I was like, oh, one section's this, one section's that. This section would be like encyclopedia, dictionary, language stuff. And like, I feel like up here was like the magazines, and I think this was like the fiction and non-fiction stuff. I could be mistaken about how I thought of that. Or maybe like that. I think up there was like the non-fiction and this was like the fiction. And like right here was like the comic books and manga I was thinking, and I don't recall what I was thinking for this one. I think I've just sort of placed these three here just by like colors I haven't really used yet. Or at least a color I haven't used yet. So yeah, it actually has a pretty decent feel of sort of like a library bookstore sort of place. And I have like these here as like those things you would see when you like walk in, and you would usually see like all these like cardboard cutout things of like advertisements of like this coming up or pre-order that, stuff like that. Yeah, I did all kind of like descriptive stuff. I even explained like most of every single thoughts that came into mind as I was piecing this together, but the video recording was way too huge. It was just insane how huge it was. Yeah, and I like described like most of my ideas for what all of these colors basically meant. And then before actually setting up every single window, I decided to skip these on both ends and have like sort of like an outdoor area, like so you wanted to read your book on the sunshine or something. Yeah. And something else that kind of came into mind is that like some people like to take a small sit just like right by the windows themselves, so I wanted the windows to kind of feel like that you could like probably do something of that sort. I felt it was probably appropriate. I went over about how I specifically spaced this to be like 2 at least for like going by every single both sides of a bookshelf. That way it would have like a more of a roomy feel for that designated bookshelf area. And then since this was like 4 wide, this would be like the main walkway out of this mess of bookshelves to over here or something. And this is like the splits between them to toward the stair area. But my original intent for like the regular bookshelf to bookshelf areas were like, the intention was 3 wide gaps. Then this, I had nothing particularly decent in mind to really resolve this kind of mess to where it would work a little more favorably, so I just sort of left it as is. And I had like this little seating here. Around the time that I set this up, I was like, there needs to be something a little more here. Let's just add some seats. You can like sit down and just like go over a few bits of a book and decide if it's like what they're looking for or not. I don't know. Maybe just straight up read it. Like those are the basic 2 things you do when you're like sitting down reading in a library. Either you're looking for some sort of specific information and don't want to check the web and prefer the more traditional means that doesn't require like the one lighting in your face. I think they call it blue light or something like that. That's considerably bad or something. So there's even, in which case, people actually made glasses specifically for that, just to block out that particular rays. Which also ideally made looking at a computer feel like a book, I guess. Not a computer. Their screens feel like a book. Yeah, that's something that I heard about on the news. But that's irrelevant now. Yeah, this is pretty well lit. Yeah, this stuff was until later. I decided I wanted a different means of lighting to make it a little less gloomier and nicer in certain areas after I got the roofing in. As like a little small cute little touch for the information desk, I decided to add this here, and it'll be like, do you guys have this book in stock or something? Or just like lying around, and I'll be like, yeah, let me just look it up. I'm sorry, we're all out of that, but we should be getting that back around, I don't know, Monday. And of course, after I did the roofing in, I did like some of the support stuff. I seen this and like thought it was a little too plain, so I thought I would like connect it to the ceiling, roofing, whatever you want to call it, and like do some like I'm having a brain fart right now. What's it called? Basically, I tossed in strips of stone brick slabs along the top as sort of like supports. That's it, supports. Well, sort of supports. Beams. Support beams. Kinda. Only like not the kind that go straight up and down. It's basically supports, is what I'm getting at. But yeah, that makes it feel a lot more structural, which is really good. It adds a lot more to the detail, rather than just like looking up and like seeing all this flatness or just like seeing one thing. It adds something different to look at and makes it a lot more engaging to the eyes and makes this feel a lot more structurally sound, like more sturdy and all that. Yeah. And around the time I did the roofing, I decided I would go one outward from where the roofing structure goes to move from what's on top of it, from one on top of it, then it would go out one more if like the next one going up was to like peek out one more block, which this case it did. So it went out one more block. And then I basically then to like connect the layers in like a more smoother transition, I used slabs and at least two columns, I guess you could call it, or two rows. Really depends on which way you look at it. From could you call it a column or a row? So I'm just gonna say rows. Then just like one in the middle, and that'll be like the very tip of it. Doesn't have to be anything further than that. Plus, for the most of these, it's been like a matter of like 2, 3, 2, 3. So this continues the 3 parts, and then it's on both sides, and then it's just like the one going through. So that's perfectly fine. But on the edges, on the front here, I made it come out like 5 without any fancy curves or anything. Then on the rest of the edges on the sides, it goes out 4 and continues like some of the curving sort of. That's like probably like the one less sensible like thing I did. Then like, oh, I also added these little pillars to the bottom with like some structuring to make it a little more sound and stable looking along the bottom. And then I hid redstone blocks powering a single dot of redstone on top, which would then go into this, and it would power that block. And I did that on both sides as like hidden sources of power for lighting. And that also gave this area a bit of like more of a nighttime like benefits than just like daytime of like being out in the sun. Like you could be in like a nice decently lit spot at night as well. Then the literal last thing I've done to this place is I added grass and some walkway. And that's basically everything I did to this in exact order. So this will be available for download. I will provide a link in the description to a post on Planet Minecraft. I like posting stuff on Planet Minecraft. And that will be cool. So yeah. If you want to check it out, feel free to go do so. I hope you enjoyed. I hope this inspires some of you to try out a few things. Or even like opens your imagination some. So like things you could probably try a little harder at going about. Like I normally wouldn't actually consider this sort of thing. But something about talking about some place you've actually been to and like actually thinking what there is like puts you in a more thinking process about going about it rather than just like standard normal stuff like, oh, bookshelves, bookshelves, bookshelves. This is a public library, people. We can't just do that. There's people wants to also make sure we know there's going to be this coming out. We can pre-order this and maybe even help the library chip in for the coming out of this particular book or novel or something for the rest of the community to read or something. I actually don't know if it happens exactly like that, but I'm sure there's some kind of process where that gets its funding. So yeah. That's about it. I'm Winter Solstice 8, 41 Solstice 25, and hang on, so by the way, this is what I was using the previous video. I basically set on a skin layer above my regular one a penguin skin. Yeah, made it myself. It's got a watch. It's got a sort of like the satchel thing and a wrist armband and a hat. I actually don't know if that's called a satchel. I could be mistaken. But the point is, it's like on you belt storage sort of thing. The part that's almost stumped me is making sure you could tell its eyes right there versus part of his penguin feathers and such. I decided to just sort of like cycle that a bit around to make sure the eyes were specifically darker than the rest of what bordered it. But anyway, thank you so much for watching, and have a good day. Bye bye.